Smith's dad, George Smith, and I just thought that I would kind of take the easy way out here and use a tape to communicate with you about Pat. The few pictures that we've got, we've only got just the one copy, and so we thought maybe this would be a simpler way. And besides, I got all these toys that I like to play with, so you'll have to indulge me here for a little while I do my little thing with the camera here and the computer and whatnot. When Pat was born at the hospital, they never, the doctors and the nurses more or less hinted to us that he would probably never live long enough to get out of the hospital. And that's why I chose the title Pat Smith Lives in quotation marks, because he certainly did live, and he's far outseated any expectations that any of those people had, or us for that matter. So we're pretty proud of the fact that he has been a little scrapper all these years. He ended up with rather major surgery within the first 2 weeks of after he was born. He had a hernia operation that was an absolute necessity in order for him to survive those first few weeks. So he started out battling right from the beginning, and now I'll run some pictures kind of in the chronological order a little bit. It was over a year before we ever took a picture of him, and so our first one is not when he was a tiny baby, but when he was about a year old. But I'll run the pictures, and we'll kind of throw in a little comment here and there to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Here Pat is at Christmas time of 1963. He's just a little over a year old then, and he's already got his first casts on for his to correct his hip problems, and also to correct the club feet. And that's his sister Kathy holding him there. And it's that's the, I think, well, we took pictures of him when he was smaller, but they're so you can't hardly see him. He's inside of a crib, and they weren't very good pictures, so we didn't include them here. Here he is. This is at about 17 months, and this gives you a pretty good idea of the problem he was having with his hands at that time. They put splints on his hands for a while and worked some of that out of there, but it was pretty tight. They didn't have much success with that. And that was with his hips and his feet. That was our major goals there in those early days. Now here he is, and this is in 1966 now. So he's about 4 years old here, and as you can see, his hands are still kind of tight. Still a little bit of a problem there. And he's still got casts on his feet, but his hips have now been taken care of, so he's made some progress in that regard. And here he is at about 6 years old. This gives you a pretty good indication of the problem that he was having with his mouth. It's pretty small on there. When he was born, we had an awful time. His mouth was so small that it was very difficult to get a nipple in his mouth. We had to use the smallest one we could get, and then we still had problems to get him so he could suck on it. But we managed. Now here he is on his 7th birthday. He's there getting ready to dive into his birthday cake, I guess. And he's still got casts on his feet, I'm sure, at that time. They didn't show up in the picture, but I'm pretty sure that he was still wearing casts on his feet yet then. So that was kind of a long, drawn-out process, getting those feet straightened and the hips straightened out. Now here he is at 10 years old, and you will notice now that his mouth is shaped a little differently. It was sometime between the 7th and 10th year that we went to the University of Minnesota, and they did a lot of examining and a lot of measuring and a lot of talking. And the first thing they decided that needed to be done was that his mouth needed to be have some work done on it. So they, one of the specialists there in Minneapolis, performed the surgery on his mouth, and that was in preparation for hopefully removing some excess teeth in there and doing some bone work and reshaping his entire jawbone there. But we never went through with the final end result of all of that. After a number of years of working with it, it got to the point where Pat had just about had all of the surgery and the difficulties that he could handle, and so we kind of more or less left it up to him, I guess, and he wasn't all that thrilled about going forward with it. They had indicated that they might be able to change his appearance for the better, and but there was no real guarantees of that. And so we started getting a little bit hesitant about all of that. So we never followed through with it. And to this, even now, he's still got a problem with his teeth that's going to have to probably be dealt with sometime. I took a trip to California and to Disneyland in 1976, and Pat got to visit with his friend Mickey there. He was pretty excited about that. Here is his graduation picture from high school. Doesn't look terribly excited about it, but it was a great momentous occasion for him. He was pretty thrilled about it. He went to the Crippled Children's School in Sioux Falls, South Dakota until about the 7th grade. And then was about the time that they decided that a lot of these children that were in these special situations needed to be mainstreamed more into with the rest of the children, and that's what happened. We brought him back here to Yankton, and he started the school here in Yankton, and much to our surprise, it went real well. The children were accepted him without a lot of difficulty, and he was able to learn a lot more in that environment than he was in the other environment. Even though that was a very good school, it still was holding him back, and we didn't realize that until fortunately a social worker that came to Crippled Children's saw the problem and helped us out in that regard. And here he is graduating from Northern State College in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and with his BA degree. And he was that was a highlight in his life also, of course. And we were all pretty proud of that. And now here he is receiving his, well, he's already received it. The ceremonies are over. He received his master's degree in English from the St. Cloud State University in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And that's his mother on his right, and some friends on his left there. And so that was another milestone in his life that was quite important. And here's another picture taken about that same time. He's got, notice he has the academic look now. He's got to have the beard and all that. You also might notice that over the years, he started out, he was a pretty thin, frail little guy, but he has put on a few pounds over the years. And now it's gotten to the point where he's starting to think very seriously about trying to get some of it back off again. So, seems like you go from, there's always some problem to deal with. And I'm going to, I think, run maybe just a few little pieces of some of the tape that we've taken in the last couple of years here since we got the VCR, and gives you a little better idea of his attitude and his personality, hopefully.
Over the Italian pork chops.
But I'm going to do it right now. Come it down.
You know, after you get them turned over, then what happens?
And now we got to brown the other side.
Oh, they sure look good.
First, though, we have to put on some garlic.
Don't you think you're laying that garlic on a little heavy?
The way to do her.
I see. I shouldn't question the cook, right?
Right. Why do you think they call it Italian pork chops?
I see. But didn't Mr. Hasker say that the sausages were awfully hot?
What's that?
Didn't Mr. Hasker say that the sausages were awfully hot?
Uh-huh.
So maybe that'll be enough heat.
Season it with pepper.
I see.
Season it with salt. And now wait for that to brown.
Okay.
We'll flip over the tape while we're doing this.
I see. Uh-huh.
Actually, we won't flip over a tape because that tape happens to be over.
I see.
And I'm going to listen to Kim Carnes' Voyeur 3D.
Now, come on, let's not get too carried away here with this. You always have your tape deck in the kitchen with you when you're cooking?
Pardon me?
You always have the tape deck in the kitchen when you're cooking?
Yes.
Don't you think that's a little distracting?
Because I find cooking very relaxing, and I find listening to music very relaxing.
I see.
So both in the combination make it almost ecstasy.
I see.
I'm almost ready to fall asleep right now.
I see. Well, maybe you should go back and look at your pork chops to see how they're doing.
As soon as I put this away.
Well, I was thinking that if we don't, when they watch this, they're going to fall asleep. We've got to have a little action. Interested in what you're doing. Does she always pay this much attention to your cooking?
No.
You certainly have a beautiful kitchen. Do you clean this yourself, or do you have someone come in and do it?
I do it. See it when I go to college.
I see. What happens to it then?
Then it turns into a chocolate dust.
Is that a fact? I'll be darned.
Davis, who went on the road again.
St. Cloud State University is a very popular school among students from central Minnesota and beyond. Its doors are open to everyone who has the will to learn. Take, for example, this young man. 25-year-old Patrick Smith not only spends 8 hours a day in class, he works for over 4 hours helping others like himself. Pat was born with an extremely rare complaint called Whistler's disease. It's a miracle he lived at all.
Here I was, a Protestant, and in a Catholic hospital. They had the nurses in there baptizing me Catholic, and the priest, getting ready to...
The last rites.
Last rites, basically, yeah.
It's taken 25 major operations to get Pat Smith this far. There were times when he almost gave up trying to make something of himself.
It was time to decide, either I go back to school and get serious, or I was going to be weaving baskets, was my frightening thought, because I think I'm better than that. I should be better than that.
Now this aspiring actor takes playwriting classes on his way to a master's degree in English.
More of the knife and fork than napkin.
I said eggs, Jack.
I heard that. I know what you want. And it's no, no, no way, no, no go, no how.
Pat recognizes his dreams are emotional as well as practical.
They say that performers perform on stage to be other people so they don't have to deal with who they are. And I think there's probably some merit to that in my case. But I don't plan on doing things that I can't do. There's the key.
Jason Davis with photographer Phil Tisi on the road again in St. Cloud.
Well, there's at least part of the story of Pat's life, and there were a couple of things I wanted to mention there that I didn't say as we were going along. In that sequence where he was in the kitchen frying the pork chops, you probably noticed that he was having a little difficulty hearing me, and he did have a real severe hearing problem, but since then that has been corrected with hearing aids, so that's not a problem anymore. Well, it's a problem, of course, because he still has to use the hearing aids, but at least now he can hear without any difficulty. And the other thing I was going to mention that I forgot earlier on was about he had a real problem with scoliosis in his younger years, and so he ended up with a Harrington rod in his back, which prevented it from getting any worse than it was at that time. And so that was a rather difficult period for him. He gained about 2.5 inches in length as a result of that Harrington rod. They stretched him out for a couple of weeks on a rack there, and was able to gain a couple of inches of length as a result. So at any rate, that pretty much sums up right now his biggest difficulty. Of course, now he is out of school, graduated, and it appears that maybe the real test is yet to come. He's been out of school now for a little over a year, and he still has not been able to find work. And now we're starting to see some of the real problems that are going to arise as he goes along, the prejudices and some of the reluctance of people to accept him the way he is. And this is kind of hard on him too. But knowing Pat, I just have a feeling that he's going to overcome all that and go on to bigger and better things. So with that, we will say goodbye for now, and we hope you enjoy our little thing here that we did. And I'm thinking that I may make a little master of this, and if need be, maybe add on to it at some later date as things progress here. And hopefully there'll be a lot of positive things to add to the tape as we go along. Yeah, I was just going to add a few more pictures on there and a little bit of comment. As most of you, Patrick passed away January 1st of 2000 at the age of 37. And probably from sleep apnea is what they kind of thought maybe the problem was. But at any rate, I just wanted to add a couple of things there. And this picture is a picture of Pat and a dog, the little dog we used to have. And that was taken just a few years ago. Actually, this is 10 years later from the time that the first part of this thing was set up. But this picture is of Pat and that little dog. And the reason I wanted to mention it is because when that dog was a tiny puppy, when we first brought him home, my wife and I tried our darndest to get that dog to take to a leash. And we took him to obedience school, and we did everything we could think of. And that dog just would not accept that leash. And one day, Pat came home for the holidays or something, and I was telling him about what a time we were having with that dog. And he says, well, let me try that. And so he took that leash, and he walked over and he hooked it onto that dog's collar. And he and that dog took off across the room like they'd been doing it all their lives. And we always thought that was rather unusual that that dog would take to him so quickly, and never questioned that. And from then on, that dog never had a problem with him with that leash after that. Just thought that just something that was kind of a human interest thing there that was kind of interesting, I thought. And here is a picture of Pat when he was in Washington, D.C. He eventually, after he came home from college, he eventually got a job with an outfit called Prairie Freedom Center, and they dealt with people with the disadvantaged people. And his job was to counsel those people. And he had gone to Washington, D.C. for some kind of a seminar. And this is a picture of him standing out in front of the Capitol. I just thought I'd stick that in there. And here Pat is with a little friend of his, a little guy that he babysat quite often. And this picture was taken not too long before he passed away. And it was always kind of interesting too to notice that the little people really took to Pat. All of his nieces and nephews when they were little was always receptive to Pat. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. So that's about it. I just thought I'd add that on to the end here and kind of bring you up to speed on what it was like in the later years there.